Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you are someone who loves a really clear, efficient breakdown of how the financial world actually works beneath the surface, you are in exactly the right place today. We're going to take apart a concept that is so deeply embedded in our culture, so universally accepted, that almost nobody stops to question it anymore. We're going to look closely at the most famous financial milestone that basically all of us are chasing, the absolute holy grail of personal finance, and we're going to explore why it might actually be a complete illusion. I am talking, of course, about the six-figure mark, hitting $100,000. We've all heard it, right? We're told to aim for a six-figure salary, to build a six-figure savings account, to reach a six-figure net worth. It is the gold standard of making it. But today, we're going to strip away the hype, look at the cold hard math, and figure out what that number actually represents in the modern world. So get comfortable, grab a notebook if you need to, because we're going to completely reframe how you look at the numbers sitting in your bank account right now.
Okay, let's dive right into this by looking at a real-world example. We're going to talk about Sarah. Sarah is a real person, a dedicated saver who recently experienced something I think a lot of us can relate to. She was sitting on her couch one evening, opened her phone, and got the notification from her investment app that her retirement account had finally, after years of disciplined saving, crossed into six figures. The balance hit exactly $100,247. She actually took a screenshot of it. I mean, you kind of have to, right? It's a huge moment. She almost texted her sister to celebrate, and then she just sat there for a second, waiting to feel it. You know the exact feeling I'm talking about, the one every finance book and influencer promises that you're going to feel? That massive, overwhelming whoosh of arrival, the feeling of finally making it to the mountaintop. You expect to hear angels singing, right? But instead, she felt absolutely nothing. Nothing changed. The room looked the same. She felt the same. Maybe she felt a tiny fleeting flicker of pride. But then, reality set in. She opened her main banking app to check if she could afford to put new tires on her car that week, and that victorious feeling just evaporated completely. It was gone.
And this brings us right to our core premise for this explainer today. Something is profoundly wrong with that picture. And I promise you, it's not Sarah. Sarah did exactly what she was supposed to do. She followed the blueprint. What's wrong is the number itself. For decades now, $100,000 has been treated as the ultimate financial finish line. Hit six figures, and you've arrived. You can breathe easy. We see it constantly in movies. It is the anchor of almost all modern career advice. It's the number every finance influencer on the internet uses as the ultimate "you made it" milestone. But here is the massive, glaring truth that nobody is telling you when they sell you that dream. That number does not mean what it used to mean. Not even close. For a lot of people living in the modern economy, it barely means anything at all anymore. It's a ghost of a milestone.
So, let's move into part one, the six-figure illusion, and why we naturally worship that $100,000 mark.
Why does 100 grand instantly pop into your head as the definition of making it? Well, partly because human beings love clean, round numbers. 6 digits just looks visually satisfying on a screen. But it's much deeper than that. Think about it like a literal picture frame hanging on your wall that hasn't been resized or changed in 40 years. Notice the visual on the screen here. The frame on the left still says $100,000 equals wealthy, in big, bold, shiny letters. It's the exact same frame your parents looked at, but look closer at the right side of the slide. The picture inside that frame, meaning what that money can actually buy, the lifestyle it actually represents in the real world, has been quietly, steadily shrinking the entire time. It's fading. The problem is that culturally, we've all been standing around admiring the exact same picture frame for 4 decades, completely hypnotized by the shiny border, and nobody tapped us on the shoulder and told us to look closer at what's actually inside it today. We are chasing a vintage idea of wealth using a completely outdated metric.
Let's watch exactly how this plays out over a timeline. Now, fair warning, this is the part that might annoy you a little bit, but it is absolutely crucial to understand if you want to get your mindset right. The $100,000 that meant you made it to your parents' generation is fundamentally not the same $100,000 sitting in your brokerage account today. Look at the timeline on the screen. Let's rewind to the 1990s. 100 grand in cash back then could put a serious, life-changing down payment on a beautiful house in almost any part of the country. In some places, it could literally buy the whole house. It was undeniable leverage. Now, fast forward to today. 100 grand today, in a lot of major metropolitan cities, if you're trying to buy a home, that 100 grand barely covers your closing costs, maybe a tiny fractional down payment and renting the moving truck for the weekend. It is the exact same number. The digits haven't changed, but it has wildly different power in the real world. The number didn't get worse, you didn't do anything wrong, it's just that what the number can actually buy has been decimated.
Which leads us perfectly into part 2, the invisible math and the silent loss of your money's power. Here's the scariest part about this whole illusion. Nobody sends you a letter in the mail on January 1st saying, hey, just a heads up, your hard-earned money is worth significantly less than it was last year. There's no dramatic market crash to point to, there are no blaring news headlines or red arrows flashing on Wall Street. It is totally, completely silent. It's like a slow leak in a tire. So let's do the actual math together, because this is where the six-figure illusion completely falls apart under scrutiny. Say you're 30 years old today, you have your $100,000 saved up in cash, and you feel amazing about it. Milestone achieved, right? You pat yourself on the back. But let's say inflation runs at a totally normal, historically boring rate of just 3% a year. We're not even talking about crazy runaway inflation here, just 3%. That static $100,000 sitting untouched will only have the real buying power of $55,000 20 years from now. Let that sink in. The screen on your banking app won't lie to you. It will still say you have exactly $100,000. But when you go to the store or try to buy property or pay for healthcare, it will only buy you roughly 55 grand worth of goods in today's terms. Time is quietly, methodically taking a bite out of your milestone every single year. And because the number on the screen never visibly drops, you don't even feel the leak happening until it's too late.
So the crucial point here is visualizing the massive, life-altering gap between two totally different financial mindsets. On this chart, we have two people who both hit that magic $100,000 mark. Person one, represented by the bar on the left, parks their money in a basic savings account. They treat the 100 grand as a finish line. They made it. They put the trophy on the shelf. 20 years later, exactly like we just talked about, inflation has eroded their real purchasing power down to about $55,000. Their money went backward while they were busy celebrating. Now look at person two, the bar on the right. They understand the illusion. They treat that $100,000 not as a finish line, but as a starting line. They take that capital, they invest it, and let's say they earn a very modest, totally realistic 7% average annual return. 20 years later, they aren't sitting on a depreciating asset. They are sitting on nearly $387,000. It's the same starting number, the exact same amount of time passed for both of them, but the gap between treating six figures as a finish line versus a starting line is not some minor rounding error. It is a $330,000 canyon. That is the cost of the illusion.
Now, let's move to section 3 and explore the psychology behind this, the milestone trap.
Because look, it's not just about the invisible math or inflation. It's heavily about what happens to your brain the very second you see that six-figure number pop up on your screen. When a specific number is drilled into you by society as the ultimate milestone, crossing it triggers something I call the complacency trap. And honestly, this trap is absolutely devastating to long-term wealth building. Here's how it happens. You hit the number, you cross the 100 grand mark, and you mentally exhale. You relax. You figure, hey, I've done the hard part. The heavy lifting is over. And almost immediately, without you even realizing it, a lifestyle upgrade suddenly feels earned. You look at your 5-year-old car and think, well, I've got 100 grand in the bank. Maybe I should get something nicer. You start justifying a more expensive apartment, or booking luxury vacations, or grabbing expensive dinners out that used to be a rare once-a-month treat. It's the classic I've earned this syndrome. And sure, technically speaking, you have earned the right to enjoy the money you worked for. Nobody is denying that. But the extreme danger here is that you stop building, you lose your financial discipline, the exact second you hit a number that was never actually a finish line to begin with. You let off the gas right when you should be accelerating.
If there is one single concept I really want you to take away from this explainer today, it is this phrase right here on the screen. $100,000 is a beginning of momentum, not a trophy to put on the shelf to gather dust. Think of it like pushing a massive boulder up a steep hill. Getting to 100 grand is exhausting. It takes years of pushing. But once you get there, the hill levels out, and the boulder finally starts rolling down the other side on its own. If you have 100 grand invested and earning a reasonable return, that money is finally generating real, tangible cash without you having to lift a finger. We're talking maybe $7,000 or $8,000 a year just from your money existing and working for you. Your capital is finally pulling its own weight, which makes hitting six figures the absolute worst possible time to turn what should be a brief, refreshing rest stop into a permanent parking spot. You finally have momentum. Don't kill it by trying to build a house on the rest stop. Let's transition to section 4. If the number is an illusion, what's the alternative? Measuring freedom, not dollars.
So, if we accept that this specific round number is a dangerous illusion, what exactly should we be measuring instead? The answer is that context is everything. Look at the stark comparison on this slide. Let's say you're a 22-year-old. You have no dependents, you're splitting cheap rent with 3 roommates, and you somehow have 100 grand in the bank. For that person, that number is a genuinely enormous cushion. It's runway to take huge risks, start a business, or travel for a year. But take that exact same $100,000 and give it to a 45-year-old who is supporting a family, paying a mortgage in a high cost of living city, and trying to help aging parents. For them, that 100 grand is barely a basic safety net. If they lose their job, that money evaporates frighteningly fast. It is the exact same six-figure balance down to the penny, but it means entirely different things depending on your age, your geographic location, and your daily life responsibilities. The number, entirely by itself, tells you almost nothing about your actual financial security. And I have to be completely honest with you here. There is no magic replacement number I can give you. If you just decide to swap out 100 grand and say, okay, my new finish line is 250,000, you haven't solved the problem. You've just built the exact same illusion with a slightly bigger price tag. The frame on the wall gets replaced, but the fundamental mistake stays totally identical.
So what is the true universal metric of wealth that actually matters? It's right here on the screen, your expense ratio. This entirely replaces the cultural obsession with absolute dollars and replaces it with a measurement of time. Your expense ratio is simply how many months of your actual current life your bank balance could cover if your income stopped completely tomorrow. Think of it like a fuel gauge. It doesn't matter if you have 10 gallons of gas or 50 gallons of gas. What matters is how many miles that fuel will actually let you drive your specific vehicle. 100 grand that covers 4 months of life in an expensive city is a totally different financial reality than 100 grand that covers 3 full years of life in a lower cost area. When you start calculating this, it changes your whole paradigm. You stop looking at the digits. The real currency of wealth isn't dollars at all. The real currency is the freedom the number buys you, and freedom is only ever measured in time.
Let's bring this narrative right back to Sarah to close the loop on her story. Remember her from the beginning of the explainer, sitting on her couch feeling nothing? Well, she got really curious about why she didn't feel that whoosh of arrival. She knew something was off. So she sat down and ran the actual math on her seemingly massive account balance using this exact expense ratio metric we just learned. She took her 100 grand and divided it by what it actually costs to run her life every single month. She calculated exactly how long her money would last if her world just stopped tomorrow. The answer staring back at her from the calculator? 5 months. For Sarah, living in her specific city with her specific rent and expenses, $100,000 was exactly 5 months of real life. Now look, 5 months of security is fantastic. It's definitely not nothing. But it absolutely, undeniably wasn't the permanent finish line she'd been promised her whole life. Seeing this single, humbling number, 5, is exactly what snapped her out of the illusion. It's what prompted her to keep grinding, to keep compounding her money, and to keep building her wealth instead of going out and blowing it on a lifestyle upgrade.
So, how do we all systematically escape this illusion? Let's break down the actionable steps here with a clear action plan. Step 1 is crucial. You have to stop measuring your progress against culture. Ask yourself honestly if the financial milestone you are chasing actually means something tangible to your daily life, or if it's just a number that sounds really impressive at a dinner party. Let go of the vanity metrics. Step 2, start thinking in coverage. Stop checking your app and asking, how much money do I have? And start asking the real question, how many months of my actual life does this capital cover? Change the unit of measurement from dollars to days. And finally, step 3, resist the urge to spend against your own momentum. When you hit a major milestone, whether it's 50 grand, 100 grand, or $500,000, don't immediately celebrate by increasing your expenses. Let the mathematical magic of compounding do its work uninterrupted. Let the boulder roll down the hill.
Which leaves us with one final, profound question to consider as we wrap this up. Are you admiring the picture, or are you keeping the camera rolling? Because ultimately, a bank balance of $100,000 is just a snapshot. It is a single, frozen frame in a movie that is still actively playing out. The only thing that actually matters in the grand scheme of your financial life is whether you keep the camera rolling after you hit that milestone, or whether you stop, get comfortable, and admire the static picture while the real story of wealth building moves on without you. Remember, the round number on your screen isn't the actual milestone. What you choose to do the day after you see that number pop up is. I really want you to think about that the next time you log into your bank account and look at your balance. Keep learning, keep focusing on the metrics that actually matter in the real world, and I'll see you in the next explainer.